You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and Bing.com, and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is AfterBuzz TV's The Amazing Race After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. If you'd like to buzz in on tonight's show, you can buzz us at 424-256-1729. That's 424-256-1729. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's The Amazing Race After Show.
Woo! Yeah, say it. Yeah. Everybody, hello there. Bing is for doing, and we are doing the season finale.
The finale of Amazing Race.
Yes, the finale of Amazing Race. And I am not going to sing the whole episode, but I'm Nando Velasquez, and joining me is the lovely Jessica Carroll. Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Carroll, and I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
Because this is the last time.
I know. It's the last time.
The last episode of Amazing Race until next season.
And unfortunately, Mr. James Wallington, who is the Uber fan, well, we're all Uber fans, but he's really passionate about it too.
Let's just say he's the only one out of the three of us who actually auditioned for the show.
Yes, exactly. And he posts on YouTube all the time and everything. But anyway, he is still out somewhere in Michigan in the middle of something and was not able to join us today. So, sad. Sad we don't get to share this finale with him. But
we can just talk about him behind his back.
We'll talk. Well, he'll be listening. He'll listen at some point. So, but anyway, so welcome, and let's get cracking on this.
Yes, we got a lot to cover.
It's 2 hours, and we have our usual approximate 50 minutes that we usually put it all in. So let's get cracking. We started off, first of all, the name of the episode is The Beacon of Hope, which is the name of the thing with the ring, really. That's the name of the statue.
Giant with the ring,
The giant with the ring. And this is
the 11th leg.
Exactly. This is the 11th leg. 4 teams left at the start. And it's Max and Katie, who have been on an incredible run, winning 2 in a row at the time, and followed by Bates and Anthony, our hockey players. Caroline and Jennifer, our country singers, our country girls. And Mona and Beth, our roller derby moms. So, and they're all pretty much leaving in the PM. It's Max and Katie in the lead by about 7 minutes at 4:07 p.m., followed by Bates and Anthony. Caroline and Jennifer an hour later. Mona and Beth around 7:30 p.m. You know what? It doesn't even matter. They all catch up anyway, but I like saying it. So they're supposed to, they start off the race, they're supposed to travel by train to Stranraer, Scotland. I think I'm saying that right.
Right.
Yeah? Okay, cool. My Scottish is just not that good.
I mean, I don't know any better than you do, so sure, we'll go with that.
Sure, we'll go with that. So they travel by train to Scotland, Stranraer, Scotland, and then take the ferry to the capital of Northern Ireland, which is Belfast.
Belfast.
Yes, exactly. And then they must pick up a Ford Fiesta, the second Ford product placement for another car, Ford Fiesta, this season, and drive to Peatlands Park to pick up their next clue. So, as I've said, all teams end up catching up. They tease a little bit that the first couple of teams kind of get away a little bit, Max and Katie with the hockey brothers, but, they all catch up.
Yeah.
So we'll skip on that. One thing I thought was interesting, and I don't know if it was really good strategy or not. I love that Max and Katie, when they got to see the Derby moms, when they just couldn't help but ask, Max couldn't help but ask, like, oh, what happened last week? When you found out there was only 2 cars and you thought you were in front.
How did you feel when you only saw 2 cars left? He just wanted to dig it in, which, I mean,
you got to know, right? I mean, I was looking, I as much as I love the Derby moms and Team YouTube, I even couldn't wait to see the look on their faces.
Oh, yeah. That was actually priceless.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, Max just wanted to get all of the sucking out of them. He really wanted to just dig it in. But also, Bates and Anthony did say that they really wanted to get the Derby moms out of there.
Yeah.
They thought they were the biggest competition. And I think it's because, Anthony and Bates and the Derby moms are both those competitive athletes. And so they really think they're
Oh, yeah.
the most competition.
Oh yeah, they're probably I think the strongest.
Yeah.
Physically, out of all the teams, and the most competitive.
Right.
Well, I don't know about the most competitive, but they're definitely the strongest physically.
Yeah.
So the most determined in that
And then we
sense.
had Caroline and Jennifer,
Yeah.
our 2 country singer
Just
girls.
grateful to be there. They're having a good time.
So happy. They're full of faith. They got a different tune for every
Oh yeah,
experience on the show. They're just a bundle of fun.
yeah.
Or as they said, the little engine that could. They just kept going, chugging away. Using their flirting skills to kind of help them a little bit.
Oh yeah. Well, if they got it, they flaunt it. That's
Exactly.
all fine. And then of course Max and Katie, who are just they're just on fire.
They are
just on fire. So. Anyway, all the teams get to Belfast, and the first thing they do once they get to Peatlands is they experience their first roadblock of this episode. And the roadblock clue is who wants to get bogged down.
But the thing that I really liked before they hit the roadblock
Sure.
is that when they were at the was it an 8-hour ferry ride, or was that later on?
I think it was later on. 'Cause
Well, where were they? Where they were all together?
Yeah, they were all together on the first ferry ride, all 4 teams.
And they were really getting along and
Yeah.
talking, except for what Max said. But I thought that was kind of cool. It's like the calm before the storm, because they know
Yeah.
when they were together, they were all there on equal. But then the minute they stepped off, it was the foot run, and they got to just go for it.
Well, I think it's always great to see those kinds of scenes because we don't see
much of them.
We don't see the travel scenes. We don't see when they're all hanging out.
Right.
And I think for the most part, I think the scenes where we see a lot of drama, even though there's a lot of stress probably involved in a race, there's so much downtime that these teams can't help but say, hey, you know what? While we're hanging out, let's get along.
Right, let's...
And I think there is a bond. It's been funny because they've been really throwing this whole alliance into play this season.
Yeah.
And I think last season was a little bit worse with the alliance, with the twinnies, and they're going for Abby and Ryan
Right.
and everything. But this one, they seem to all get along. It's just that when the race starts, it's like, okay, we got our alliance, you got yours.
We got to go, yeah.
Exactly. But there were some moments. That was that moment in the beginning, and then there was a moment, I think, in the second hour when it was just the 3 of them left too. It was I think it was both ferries or something.
Yeah, well, they were on one ferry that was like 8 hours, and they were
Yeah.
out on the dock enjoying the crazy wind.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of cool.
Oh,
but
that's
then again, they don't really know anyone else around, so it's kind of good that they interact, because you'd probably get sick of your partner, so they interact with each other with different teams.
Well, even not to skip ahead all the way to the ending, but I think somebody said at the end after the whole thing was over that this was like a family, that they
Yeah.
would all
Like
keep in
lifetime
touch.
friends, yeah.
Exactly, lifetime friends, exactly. So, yeah, I think that's what happens when you go around the world with like 10 other couples,
Right.
So there you go. But anyway, so let's get to the roadblock, which is the weirdest sport that ever came up.
Oh my gosh, this roadblock. Okay, there's not a lot of roadblocks that I can actually say there's no way I could do this. But be like claustrophobic in that wetsuit and swimming because they had to swim, they had to take a train and then do bog snorkeling.
Yes.
The thought of it, I would have been right along the line with Jennifer. I mean, I probably would have pushed myself to keep going because she stopped, but I would have just kept going to get myself out of there.
Not just Jennifer. I mean, Mona really booked
Yeah.
it. She had like all of her fears at once. She said fear of getting dirty, fear of there was a couple of fears in there. I believe that she said. I didn't write them down, but she was so scared. She was making all those weird noises at the
Yeah,
end.
she was. Was she crying kind of?
I think it was kind of like.
Crying and screaming and like.
I think it was kind of like she was letting herself be heard to try
Yeah.
and stop herself from crying. It was like exerting herself to stop from crying. But it was like she was like, get it off of me at the end. It was really, really sad.
How would you have done in this roadblock?
I would have hated it. Honestly, I'm not that great a swimmer to begin with. I guess it seems like they gave enough time to do it without being a great swimmer. But still, it would have been awful for me. It would have been awful.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'm a pretty good swimmer and I have no fear of water or anything. I think it's just the fact that you're like in this mud and it's like pushing on you and it's going to be hard. But I was actually really surprised. Katie, she jumped in.
Yeah.
She did it even though she was like hating it. 3 minutes later, she got out.
Katie sometimes seems a little prissy, but she was really willing to do it.
And of course, Anthony just boom, banged it out.
He had the best time out of all of them.
Yeah.
Mona had the second best time. She did in 2:53. And then Max and Katie did in 3:18. And then here's the point where really, almost at this point, it's like, let's just fast forward to the second hour already, because Jennifer just could not do it. She freaked out. She tried doing it, and then she jumped in the wrong side. She was just
that mud.
Yeah, she was just so torn apart. She just couldn't concentrate or anything, and didn't want to go back in. So it was a really, really tough one.
And not only was it muddy and disgusting, it was freezing.
Yeah.
Oh man, this roadblock, I still get like the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
This is like a fear.
Well, don't forget, by this time, when you're in the 11th leg, they gotta amp up the difficulty a little bit more.
But I have to say, they all looked like Scuba Steve in those ridiculous outfits, especially because the wetsuits went above their chin. I mean, just, that good thing they were wearing it, though.
I just don't know who thought this up or why they thought this was fun. Whoever in Ireland, Northern Ireland, said, "Oh, this is a great idea. Let's do some bog snorkeling." I have no idea about that, but
doing a cannonball in the mud, that part looked fun.
That looked fun. I'll give you that.
Just not the swimming.
So, and the other thing about this race, about this obstacle at least, is the teams got to do it one at a time. So pretty much the order where they came in
was the order they got out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if Caroline and Jennifer went in first, considering Jennifer had freaked out, they'd probably have to sit aside and let everyone else go. But they were already in last place, so they stayed there while the other three teams moved on to find the thing with the ring, the beacon of hope, which they seem to. Here's something really interesting at this point, and luckily it didn't cause too much trouble. But there was a lot of let's follow this team, let's follow that team.
There was.
They don't seem to trust their own direction as much, so they are determined to follow somebody else, which actually is okay for. It's okay when people are right, but when you're following a team that's lost, you're just going to be another team that's lost. Yeah. And that's actually what happened right before the roadblock when Bates and Anthony were following Max and Katie, and they made that turn, which I thought they were doing the wrong thing, actually. Yeah. They ended up succeeding, and Caroline and Jennifer followed Mona and Beth.
Wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of cost them, too. And then Mona and Beth were following Max and Katie to the thing with the ring because they overheard them getting direction. So it's great strategy, but... And I guess this late in the game, this is my thought, and feel free to chime in, but this late in the game was only 3 or 4 teams left. I guess if you're following one team, you know that you can compete against that team. Maybe you're thinking, I could beat them in a foot race.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's the way I look at it. But anyway, so the 3 teams that have completed the bog snorkeling get to the detour. Mm-hmm. And the detour is tray it or spray it.
Yes.
So Tray It required teams to descend into the dry dock where the Titanic was made, which I thought was pretty awesome.
That was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. And they got to serve a menu from the days of the Titanic to a table. They had to get it all right. There was a lot of little tricks involved that they didn't mention, of course. But they had to serve 5 courses to these first-class passengers in the dining hall, which was just really some tent in the dry dock. But still, you can imagine what it would be like.
I thought this detour was absolutely hilarious.
Oh, it was awesome.
Okay, like if I got and they said you had to serve plates, the first thing I would have done was look for a menu.
Well, first of all, before you say that, so you would have picked this one over Spray It, which was doing the graffiti?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I can barely even draw a stick figure. So Tray It for sure, because, I mean, I've been to a lot of, 5-course meals and dinners like this. So when I got there, in my head, I'm just thinking, okay, so there's 5 trays. Of course, everybody always gets an appetizer. Mm-hmm. People get the same. Then you get to pick your, like it just made sense to me.
Yeah.
And I could not believe it. It made sense that Max and Katie understood because, it's clear that they travel a lot. They probably go out for nice dinners.
Well, they almost got it wrong. They actually did catch themselves.
They did, but I mean,
they almost got it wrong.
Out of everyone else, they caught on the earliest. Mm-hmm. And then Mona and Beth, I didn't like what was going on there.
Yeah.
They were just like, she was like literally just switching plates
Well, that was just weird. I mean, well, first of all, let's just describe the situation. So they had a seating chart, which only had 2 courses, but the directions specifically said they were serving a 5-course meal. So a lot of the teams were thinking, okay, first course, second course, and we'll figure out the rest. They weren't paying attention to the actual menu, because the menu had all of the courses on there and all of the results. They were just looking at the seating chart, not realizing that that was just the specific things for 2 of the courses, for the dessert course and for the soup course, which were the only courses, I guess, the guests in first class, which I think, by the way, I think is kind of weird, because usually when you go to like a wedding or some kind of reception, you always get asked about the main course if you're vegetarian or if you want chicken or steak or whatever. So I could understand perhaps that being a little bit odd, but yeah, I guess there's 4 teams left and they're racing as quickly as possible. And here's a case where they just don't read all the directions, or they don't pay attention.
They didn't pay attention because they just grabbed their seating chart and they didn't realize that there was a menu outside. And then the other thing is, I loved Anthony's little effects with the rope around the neck, and he's like, I'm gonna kill him, and how. Was it Bates dropped the tray?
Oh, no, Anthony dropped the tray. Bates was the one running back and forth, yes.
Yeah, so Anthony dropped the tray.
Exactly, yeah.
This roadblock was just a disaster.
Well, here we go. So the first course on the menu was oysters a la Russell, and everyone was supposed to get it, but of course, again, the teams didn't necessarily pay attention. And the 3 teams who were in front all chose the Titanic. So let's just say that they all chose tray it. So Max and Katie actually got it right. They almost got it wrong, but they got smart and they looked at the menu. Bates and Anthony got it wrong on the first try, but then figured it out. Mona and Beth could not get it right at all. They were stuck there forever. This was almost the equalizer for Caroline and Jennifer, actually, that the fact that they just could not. And it seemed like every time Mona, I believe it was Mona that was serving, every time Mona went down, Beth kept getting more of the wrong foods, and they were never really comparing notes. And even when Anthony, even when Bates actually said to them, he said, "Oh yeah, we just saw the menu," they still didn't listen. Yeah, they still didn't listen. So that was the first big problem. Second course was the actual on the seating chart. So that was the one where they got to do different things. Then by this time, all the teams figured out that they had to look at both the seating chart and the menu. But the big problem was, and fair enough, the big problem was nobody knew what chartreuse was. I wouldn't have known. I would have no idea. Really? No idea. I don't think I would have. I would have thought red too. I think red is the common choice for people who are guessing what chartreuse is, but it turned out it was green. I wouldn't have even known. And all the teams got it wrong. Not one of the teams knew what color chartreuse was. So they got all the desserts right except for the color. Yeah. So, and that ended up being a bit of a pain, and Bates and Anthony actually got it wrong twice. They couldn't even, I guess there were more than 2 colors there. They couldn't just choose red or green. There was yellow in there too, I heard. But again, really, it was to me, I thought it was a really awesome challenge to watch, because it really required a lot of paying attention. Also, you have to know your foods, because I believe Max and Katie had to switch because Max didn't know exactly what to look for. Yeah. So it was really, really challenging. And what maybe looked like the easier one, especially if you can't draw or you can't color, I guess, or do the graffiti, what you thought would have been the easy one really was very, very intricate and very challenging. Yeah. Yeah. The best part of this detour, though, was, could you imagine being one of those guests? I mean, they're running with the food. They're like putting it on the table, like spilling it everywhere. They're like messing up. I mean, what were those guests thinking? I mean, they probably knew what was going on, but oh my gosh, well, I just thought it was hilarious. I love the side comments. Like, you would never, if you ever were at a restaurant and the person bringing the server came out, and the server was making all these little snide comments, like, I better get a big tip for this, or all this little crazy little stuff. You'd look at them and you would complain to the manager. You would totally, but they're just like saying all this stuff, and they're just taking it in. And actually, when Mona and Beth finally got it right, I think everyone was applauding, because you can't help but want these people to get it right. As funny as it is when they get it wrong, you feel sad for them after a while. They got it wrong so many times. I know, and she was just like, she literally had no idea what was going on. Exactly. She didn't know what she was doing wrong. Yeah. But also, when Bates finally got the clue, he
was like best tip ever,
Yes.
and just they were all cheering,
Oh, yeah.
and so it was fun in the long
This
run.
is not
but
the food they ordered, and then bon appetit. You gotta love that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Bates and Anthony and Max and Katie end up finishing. Max and Katie get it right first. They almost lose it on the dessert, but again, Bates and Anthony they screwed up the dessert too. So it ended up being Max and Katie getting out of there, followed by Bates and Anthony. And then we start seeing Caroline and Jennifer finally get through bog snorkeling, and they get to spray it. They decide to do spray it,
Yes,
which is they go to this
good
urban
decision.
arts and sports center, and they have to complete a graffiti artist's drawing.
Yes.
By coloring in the spots and just doing, which I thought, seeing those pictures, I thought looked really hard, but they did a fairly decent job of it.
They did.
And they seem to have gone pretty fast. I don't know how the editing really was, but it seemed like they got pretty fast, and it seemed like they were close to a dead heat with Mona and Beth.
Yeah.
Mona and Beth finally figuring everything out once they paid attention. So it was a mad race.
Well, I just have to say that Mona's encouragement towards Jen and her cheering her on and saying she could do it, I just thought that was so great. I really liked their connection and how, or not Mona.
Not Mona. I was going to say, you mean Caroline. Yeah.
Caroline
For bog
towards
snorkeling.
Towards Jennifer.
Yes.
That was just so supportive, and you could tell that they're like sisters.
Yes.
They have such a good bond, and they, said their little prayer that God was going to lead them and help them get through this challenge. And then they get back in the car, and once again, they try using their flirting skills, and they ask for directions to the thing with the giant ring. Well, their flirting skills did not work in this case, and they ended up in a giant field.
It looked like Stonehenge for a second.
Yes.
There. Yeah.
So then they finally got back on the path and found their place where they did the spray it. And they did a great job, I
Yes.
think. And then I think their flirting skills came into play again. And they were like, oh, it looks exactly the same. It looks good. And he was like, okay.
You live by the flirt, you die by the flirt. There
Exactly.
you go. And you don't have to flirt to get wrong directions. It happens all the time, and you get a wrong taxi who doesn't know where to go. You try and be nice, and
Right.
and you still get bit in the butt with karma or whatever. So it happens regardless of flirting or not. But I will say the one thing that flirting does sometimes do, if you're going to get wrong directions and you're going to spend an extra 3 minutes just flirting with somebody, that costs you time too.
At least they made his day.
They made his day,
Right.
Because they spent an extra minute afterwards to flirt with him a little more,
Yes.
but it cost them in the end. And who knows if they didn't flirt so much, maybe they would have beaten Mona and Beth. But they never really tell us the times that it takes when the eliminated team
Yeah.
shows up, unless you see daylight change to night or vice versa. That's the only way you would really know. But unfortunately, all the other teams made it. Mona and Beth squeaked out, apparently,
Yep.
and we had to say goodbye to Caroline and to Jennifer. But again, I think it was, good job on the editing toward the end of that first hour. But I think once Jennifer freaked out about the bog snorkeling,
I felt so bad for her.
yeah, and she did that wrong move, and you saw it was an exhausting. Just to look at it was pretty exhausting. I could only imagine what it would be like
Yeah.
to snorkel through 100 yards of that. Yeah, we got to say goodbye to them. What are your thoughts about how they played?
Well, looking back, I mean, like they said, they're going to have so many things to write songs about now because they really enjoyed this journey. And to be honest, I've liked them since day one. I thought their positive attitude, how they can find fun in any situation, even when they know they're probably in last place, they still, had a positive outlook and enjoyed the journey.
Yeah.
And they really tried to reach out and make friends along the way to anyone. They weren't just, asking for directions and then taking off. They actually took the time to appreciate the person who was trying to help them.
Yes.
And even if the person led them in the wrong direction or didn't help them or didn't know how, they still said, oh, thank you so much. And they just were you couldn't not like them. They were so personal and personable and friendly.
In a way, they were a lot like Team YouTube. It's a shame they weren't in the same alliance in a way, because they were very similar. They didn't have the eagerness that Joey might have had, and they didn't flirt like Joey and Megan did. I'm sure if they had their opportunities, they would have, but they didn't flirt like them. But they still were really, really good. And one note, between the three of us last week, I don't think any of us picked them to win it. I picked Max and Katie. You picked, I think you picked Bates and Anthony
to win it. Yeah.
Yeah, and James picked the Mona and Beth.
Yeah.
So out of 4 teams, none of us picked Caroline and Jennifer. So I hate to say it, but I think it was expected of us.
It was, yeah.
It was pretty much expected.
But they made it so far. I mean,
yes.
The top 4, if you had asked me at the beginning of the show, I would have probably not said that. but that's what I love about the show is that you really never know. I mean, they could have, been at the bottom one time and then the top the next. Like, it's really about the detour and the roadblock and the flights. I mean, there's so many elements of the
absolutely.
show.
But that being said, I think for the final 3, this was the strongest final 3 in recent memory to me.
Yeah.
I think all 3 of these teams from the beginning, you would think these are powerhouse teams. I mean, the father and son team with Connor,
Yes.
they actually surprised me in the beginning. They were really, and they became a favorite early on. But I think everyone would have agreed that the Hockey brothers would have been the athletic threat. Anything athletic they would have done. Derby Moms just seemed like badass.
Competitive.
And Max and Katie just had that little strategic, conniving, and also that really they're willing to stab you in the back to, they kind of seem, even though they weren't really villains in my opinion, they had a little bit of a villainous edge every now and then. But all 3 of these teams, I think if you were to put money down, I think most people would have put at least 2 of these 3 teams up top.
Yes.
And it would have been a different 2 for everybody.
Exactly.
So that being said, we're starting off the last leg, the 12th leg, in Ulster Hall in Belfast, Ireland, with, like I said, probably the 3 strongest teams in this race.
Yeah.
Max and Katie, who coincidentally, or incidentally really, won their 3rd
in a row.
So this was their 3rd win in a row from the 11th leg, and they won a trip to
Punta Cana.
Yes, to Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. So they're just having fun, just winning all these prizes. Bates and Anthony right behind them.
Bates and Anthony were determined that, Bates said, I lost the Stanley Cup once. This is like the Stanley Cup, and I'm not losing it again.
I don't think it's the same as hockey, but I'll take the analogy.
Hey,
it's all good.
But, $1 million.
All right. You're Canadian, so I forget. You can associate with hockey.
I'm all about the hockey.
Yeah, you can associate with hockey a little bit more than me, so it's all good. And then Mona and Beth were about roughly a half hour behind them.
And I thought it was really neat that Mona and Beth finally really opened up, saying that they're a mother, they've been away from their family for a month, they want this so much, they want it for their kids, they want their kids to look back on them and be like, yeah, that's my badass mom up there. So I thought that was really neat, because when she was struggling, I got the shivers. I felt so bad for her. I just wanted to reach out and help her.
Well, again, I think I said it last week. We all said it last week that out of the teams that were left, they probably had the best story.
Yes.
Out of the rest of them, because I think we all just felt like they're the working moms and they do the derby stuff. That doesn't seem like a very lucrative career.
Yes.
Hockey, come on, the hockey guys, they play in the NHL. I can only imagine they're getting paid. I mean, maybe they're not getting paid like Michael Jordan or something, but they're getting paid some good money. They're traveling, they're doing some stuff. And Max and Katie seem to be well off. Yeah, they seem to have that air about them too. So Mona and Beth would have been a fascinating story. At this point, they are a fascinating story if they would have won. But anyway, so the 12th leg starts, and the teams are they don't get to find out exactly where their final destination is. First, they have to travel by ferry. I think that was the 8-hour ferry.
That was the 8-hour ferry.
Yes, and that was the other opportunity where they got to hang out as the 3 teams. I think they showed Bates hanging out in a chair, just lounging around. That was
the other calm before the storm.
Exactly. So they got to travel by ferry across the Irish Sea to Liverpool. And then they made their way by train to London, to find the Euston Trap. I believe it was Euston Trap, excuse me. Order a pint, and then they find their next clue. So great, you get some beer and you find the next clue.
Exactly.
Bates and Anthony were like, oh, that's easy. They ended up in 3rd place out of that. But they were like, oh, yeah, find a pint. We could do that.
Us hockey guys, we can find a beer or a bar anywhere.
Totally. So all teams are pretty much going together, but Bates and Anthony seem to take up the rear, and then all 3 teams find out they're going to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Which James predicted last week because he recognized the final destination from the clips.
Yes, he did.
So good on James and Mama Wallington. So teams were flying to Washington, D.C., and then they had to figure out their next clue was going to be on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. where Martin Luther King Jr. had his "I Have a Dream" speech.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool.
That was cool.
All the teams seem to know. Bates said he played, or he lived in Washington for a while.
So he knew pretty well.
Yeah, I'm guessing he was a Capital. I did, I didn't research or follow exactly where Bates and Anthony played, but I'm guessing he was in Washington when he did that. And so all three teams, and that was pretty cool. Actually, Max and Katie were the first team to arrive, and I thought it was really cool them taking it in, and then that guy just coming out of nowhere just saying, "This is the spot where Martin Luther King did the speech."
Yeah.
I liked that moment a lot.
And how the editors really focused, the scenery of the pond and I thought that was a really neat.
Those are moments I like when they actually let those moments breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Followed by Mona and Beth, who kind of just saw that Max and Katie. Someone's talking to Max and Katie. That must be the guy with the clue. Followed by that, which kind of ruined it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was still really cool.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. Okay, I paused this clue because I thought it was really, really interesting, and I want your take on it. So the clue that they got to see said, travel to 1100 Pennsylvania Avenue. Once there, a Secret Service agent will escort you to have your picture taken with Barack Obama. Here's the thing. And while you may not agree with President Obama's policies, please be respectful of the office he holds. Decorum must be observed at all times. So now look. Here's my thinking.
Yeah.
We've never seen like some major celebrity on the Celebrity Apprentice at all, much less a government official like that. Never, ever, ever. Unless it's like a fake, like they have a historic, like last week they had Robert Evans, I believe, the poet.
Right.
Doing the haggis thing.
Yeah.
So unless they have like a reenactment. So you would really say, reading that first part of that clue, I would say, yeah, right, it's not really Barack Obama. But following that whole little warning about no matter what your policies are,
you gotta be.
Decorum is used at all times.
Yeah.
Would you have been fooled by that? Would you have thought you were really seeing the President of the United States?
Well, because of the location and everything, I don't know. I mean, in my head, I was like, there's no way they're going to meet the president.
Yeah.
Like, the president's not going to come on Amazing Race and pass them a clue, okay? Like, let's get real. So, no, I wouldn't have.
It seemed like all three teams were fooled, though. I don't know if it's just the editing. Maybe they were thinking, oh, it's probably not, but what if it is?
Yeah.
And that's the part they showed. But it did seem like they all fell for it. Max was all like, well, I'm a Republican, but I'll still play nice. So
that was funny.
Yeah, and it was also funny how the teams were probably confusing the cab drivers by saying, take us to the White House.
Yeah.
And then they'd say 1100 Pennsylvania Avenue.
No,
When
like,
it's really, well, I don't know if anyone knows this, but it is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's a pretty well-known address. If you went to school or hear it, or even there was a TV show called 1600 Penn that NBC, that I think just got canceled. But but anyway, so the cabbies were having a little bit of fun here. They're trying to figure out where to go.
Yeah.
Mona and Beth, I think they said 1100. They said 1100, and then they also said the White House.
The White House.
So their cabbie took them to the White House, and they said, no, 1100. And the cabbie said, I have to drop you off here. I can't go any closer. So it would have been
funny.
It would have been great if they actually got to see the president somehow by accident. But they had to take another cab because it was too far away. Max and Katie, again, they seem to pay the most attention to these clues. They correctly said 1100 and figured out it wasn't the White House, and they got dropped off right there. Bates and Anthony, luckily their cabbie was a little more smarter, I think, and they realized too that they were saying two different things, and they went to 1100 as well.
Right.
To find the worst looking Secret Service. I mean, these Secret Service agents shop at the Gap or something.
Seriously.
They did not look like Secret Service agents.
They were like a costume. I mean...
It was a cheap costume. It really was. The sunglasses.
The glasses were the best. Like the black trench.
I don't think they had the Secret Service pins. I don't know if anyone's ever. I've been in front of Secret Service agents before.
I haven't.
Not for any bad reasons. No. Just me and the president every now and then.
Yeah,
past presidents.
No big deal.
They didn't even have the pin. And again, the Secret Service agent is busy saying, please respect, decorum. Please be respectful of the president at all times. And then they go into a mall. And these people are still in the mall. They're going, oh my God,
where's the president?
Where's the president in this mall? I'm going to see the president. So if that wasn't a clue, they all find out they're just going to some souvenir shop. And some guy's just going to take a photo of him in front of a green screen, shaking air, but it would look like they were shaking the president's hand.
Hilarious.
Yes, pretty awesome.
Funny.
And again, Max all of a sudden saying, well, I'm a Republican, so I'm glad I didn't see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever, man, whatever.
All right.
But still, funny moment, cute. And anyway, so the 3 teams do that, and then the next clue is to make their way to a marked car at the boat dock at Tidal Basin.
Yep.
And then just like some espionage type thing, you know, it's a darkened window. They knock 3 times. And
The secret code.
Exactly. And they get a briefcase. And I thought this was cool. They get a briefcase. It's obvious that whatever briefcase they're getting is different.
Yeah.
And I'll say why later. It's obviously they're getting one according to the team. I guess the person inside sees who's coming and grabs the Max and Katie briefcase or whatever.
Yeah.
And they do a roadblock. And this is a switchback from a couple of seasons ago where they're kind of like secret spies.
Yeah.
And they get to run around. One person gets to run around the basin, which looks like it was a really large distance to cover.
Yeah, Max said it was like 3 miles or something.
For the entire circle, but
Yeah.
I couldn't tell. It didn't look like he had to go the entire circle.
No.
Because he doubled back. And they had to find the right agent and give them the secret code.
Oh
which
my gosh,
all
the
3 of them had
codes
something
were
different.
so funny.
Yes.
I mean, what was it? Where can I get a good hand smoke with chili?
That was one of them, yeah.
That was Max's. Bates said, I didn't dress warm enough for this weather.
Uh-huh.
And Mona, the cherry blossoms are beautiful here in April.
Yes.
I mean, those are just so out of the blue, random, but yet hilarious. They said it over and over and over.
Well, what's funny is, I think, is that, you know, you expect the way this should be done is you're kind of like being sneaky and you're walking up to someone going, hey, so the cherry blossoms are beautiful in April. But instead, it's like these frantic people running, the cherry blossoms in April.
I'm not dressed warm enough for this weather.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not dressed warm enough for this
Just
weather.
screaming at everybody. If you were walking down there that day and
You'd
you just
be
have some
like-
guy like screaming at you and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they just keep running. It's like weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if they were spies, they'd be the worst spies ever.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, worst spies ever. Anyway, so here's probably the defining moment of the leg. Because the last leg, you gotta admit, the last leg's always a little anticlimactic. But here's where the thing
Is
changes.
remembering the numbers.
Well, also, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Once they get the briefcase, once they get the correct person, and they say the code, and then the Secret Service, the spy or whatever
Yeah.
says the correct response, they trade briefcases, and the spy gives the code, which the code is the order that they placed in 3 of the
countries.
3 of the countries.
Yeah.
And that's why they all had to have their own briefcase and their own thing, because
Right.
they each had a different code.
So Bates had great notes. He nailed that.
I was amazed
I was too.
because
But you know what? He must have picked up on it because he probably realized, you know, Anthony and I aren't that great at picking up on the close
Yeah.
details, so let's take notes because we probably won't be able to remember.
Well, let me say that. Yeah, let's talk about that toward the last task, because that, I think that comes into play again. Because
Right.
I definitely want to talk about that, because
Yeah.
that was really smart of them. But anyway, the defining moment not only was just the fact that Max and Katie got there first, but I guess Max must have missed his guy.
Yeah.
And then Bates is right behind him, and it was frustrating to see that Bates actually got his
Got the
guy before
briefcase.
Max did. So Max, this is where Max lost precious time.
Yeah.
And then finally Mona and Beth show up, and they end up getting their person. They're all supposed to go to. They all figure out their order. I think Bates, even with his notes, he got it wrong the first time, but he figured it
Yeah.
out. So it's all good. And they all end up going to Nat Stadium, where the Nationals play.
Yeah.
Now here's an interesting one. They have to dress up as baseballs. One of them. These really fat little baseballs, and with these cap that they can barely see out of,
Yeah.
and try and catch a ball from their teammate who's being
Flown across.
which I loved.
Oh, I love that. But
Yeah.
that would have been hard.
Would you have done? Which one would you? Which
I would
person
have
would you been?
flown.
You would have flown.
Oh man, my eye-hand coordination, horrible. I mean, this would have been like the hardest one if I was in that balloon costume.
I would have probably flown too, even though I'm not great with that. I probably would have wanted to do that over, because I think that would have been cool to
Yeah.
fly over the stadium
That
like
would
that.
have been cool.
That would have been pretty awesome. So
But
I
I
would have
loved
fought
all
for
the
that.
blow up, not just the baseball, but the other ones that were around them.
Oh yeah.
That was so funny.
It was a menagerie of mascots.
Seriously.
Yeah, it was awesome. So Bates and Anthony, being the athletes that they are, did it, I guess, on the second try. They
Second
did it
try,
right. So that was
banged
good.
it out.
And then followed by Max and Katie, which took them a little bit longer.
A lot, yeah.
And then Mona and Beth, which took them a lot longer.
Yes.
A lot
like
longer.
what? Like four or five times?
Oh, for Mona and Beth?
Yeah.
No, 17 times.
No.
No, yeah, I don't know if you missed it, but they had a Chiron on the 17th
Oh, I didn't see
attempt.
that.
It took them 17 tries.
Oh.
So, yeah, they were behind.
Ooh, yeah.
They were behind, but still, a really cute little. It was some cute levity.
It was
in this hour too.
the balloon.
Yeah,
Pretty comical.
Yeah, pretty comical, pretty fun, pretty comical.
Especially because every time they would miss the ball, they would fall forward, and then they got the little shot in the balloon with the masks, and it was pretty funny.
And Mona and Beth were just having so many problems. They couldn't even find the entrance to the stadium themselves, so they were having a lot of problems with that too. So then Anthony and Bates were finished right away. They got to go to their next destination, which was Haynes Point, and this is the iconic final challenge that always involves this. This is what usually involves note taking, and this is why I wanted to wait to talk about this about Anthony and Bates, because from the start, we knew they were athletic.
Yeah.
I actually had them eliminated a few times during the season because I just figured they weren't well-rounded enough. But it seemed like out of the 3 teams that were left, they, maybe because they just knew that they weren't strategic, as much as remembering things, that they would write everything down. They seem to have gotten that together.
Yeah.
They didn't take out their notes for this, but still, it seemed...
Because they wrote it.
But again, I would think because they wrote all this stuff down, they have it imprinted a little bit better. But I thought it was what do you think of that challenge in general? I thought it was a really interesting twist to have the ball pit and have them look for the countries and the globes and everything.
Okay, I would have been bad finding the globes, but I would have loved to jump in there. When I was young, I would always go to like Chuck E. Cheese and bounce in the ball pits and throw them up. I just think that would have been so much fun. I don't get claustrophobic or anything, so I would have had so much fun. I know my countries, so that wouldn't have been hard. It would have just been, trying to find them because there were so many in there. That would have been the hard part. But
it seemed tough, especially when they had when they got like 8 or 9 of them already to find that one last one. I would have thrown.
And the balloons were like up to their head, like once they were in the pit.
I would have thrown some of the bad ones away. I don't think you were allowed to, but I would have tried to. I would have said, okay, this is not it. Don't catch this. I would have thrown it on the other side or something, but they didn't bother with that. So
maybe they couldn't do that.
It's probably a rule.
Yeah.
But that's what I would have. That's the strategy I think I would have done going in there. But it looked kind of cool. They even had the camera guy in there taking the shots from the inside.
That was cool.
Which I thought was cool. And Bates
and then putting it in the right order.
Yes. And then the center globe would open up, kind of like
that was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a
dun,
cool.
dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
So usually these challenges are really a lot of fun when 2 or 3 teams get to the final destination. They get to do this, but because perhaps of the multiple attempts at doing the baseball thing, and even the fact that Bates and Anthony found that spy first right away, it seemed like they just had a really, really big lead. Either that, or they were super smart and just finished it right away. It might maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like a no contest at this point, which I thought was very, very surprising and almost a little bit of a disappointment.
I know, because when they've found their last globe, it was kind of like, okay, well, they're the winners.
And this is why sometimes, I mean, as much as I love The Amazing Race, sometimes that last leg just disappoints me because it usually is one move that happens in that final hour, and then and they can't help it. Maybe if it was, well, we'll talk about it more later, maybe, but it just seems to be all right. Bates and Anthony won.
Yeah.
And guess what? Bates and Anthony won. They had to go to Mount Vernon. And they ended up winning. So the contest ended up being like who's going to get in second and third, more or less. But even that was kind of a foregone conclusion. So Bates and Anthony, your projection last week, you win. You win the Amazing Race, Jessica. Yes, you win the Amazing Race. And
James.
If we put money down, you would have won money. But we did not put money down.
Darn it.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? I mean, you predicted them. What do you think? What do you think about them?
All along, not only, I'm a little biased because I do love hockey, and I'm from Canada, and hockey boys are just, But they were able to keep up. They had a great, they were able to do physically all the things that I think by them taking notes, they realized their weakness. Mm-hmm. And also being hockey players, they have to strategize kind of everything. So they have to have a plan. Like the coach will always like write down a plan before their games. And I just think that they took everything and they didn't let their, stress or their fear or their competitiveness or the time pressure, affect their performance.
Being professional athletes, they're
Yeah.
used to pressure and they can turn it on.
Exactly.
And they don't let. And you know what? When they make a mistake, as much as they like that Titanic one, for example, as much as they get all pissed off and frustrated, they can recover from that.
Right.
They seem to be able. And you know what? They had a couple of last place finishes. They were on the cusp. They almost got eliminated once or twice. So they did have.
But they
that.
always stayed positive.
Yeah.
They were great partners. I mean, towards the end, Bates or Anthony did want to kill each other.
Yeah.
During that Dre one. But besides that, they were, they never really got too emotional. They never got too upset. They never got too excited. They were just always focused.
And I will say this. I mean, I was harping on them a little bit in the beginning because again, they're very. It's obvious they're very athletic and they're professional athletes, so they could steamroll through some of the physical challenges, like the whiskey barrel rolling, for example, when they got to pick it up on their shoulders.
Exactly.
I mean, they definitely had that advantage over some of the smaller teams, but they learned. And I think they learned a lot. And the fact that they took notes, I think, was a perfect example of a team that grew with the race and they got to learn from their mistakes. And they knew what their strong points were. And it's pretty obvious when you're a strong team, you go for the strong detours, for example. But they also knew what their weak points were, and I think they improved on them. And if any team really deserved to win, I think they totally deserve to win. Before I want to talk about the other two teams, but before I do, I almost forgot this, and I want to definitely mention, you listening to us on iTunes right now. If you are, please go to iTunes and rate us. Let us know what you thought of us this season. We started this again. It was a stop, and then we started with James and myself, and then Jessica lovely Jessica joined in on us. So joined in with us. Excuse me, that sounds weird. And we'd love to hear your comments, what you think of. James comments a lot on YouTube if you go on YouTube, but please go on iTunes. Please rate us. Please comment on what you like, what you don't, so we can come back next season. So AfterBuzz knows how much you love us, and you can get us back on here in some capacity. Tell a friend. It only takes a minute. And of course, there's lots of other AfterBuzz shows. If you're listening to this one, chances are you might know of another show on AfterBuzz. There's about 50 of them, and you can rate on those too and comment on those, especially the ones we're on, because those are special to us.
Check out all the shows.
Yes. Thank you. That's Anna, our producer, doing that right there. So, and also, our producers love that too. A lot of love to Anna. So, and you can applaud for that too. So, yes. So, Bates and Anthony, winners of the Amazing Race, followed by Max and Katie, which was my pick last week because I felt they strategically were the smartest teams. What do you think? What do you think about how they played the game?
I think that they were a great team. I think that they are, they realized throughout this all that they're meant to be together. They work great together. They're a great support system for each other. Like you said, because they seemed like they were, world travelers and they've traveled before. I just thought that they played this great.
Yeah, and they had momentum.
And Katie totally stepped it up. I did not expect her to, jump off a building and get in the mud and do some of these things, and it just shows that there's girl power.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you looked at the beginning of the season and saw how she sounded like she didn't really get along. She was a little socially, I don't want to say socially awkward, but it seemed like she didn't like to be around people too often. She seemed to be very withdrawn and the kind of person that gets irritated easily. You could definitely see that at certain moments in the race. But despite that, she was able to be in an alliance with a bunch of people. Max kind of handled that a little bit more, but they got along really well, and they had the momentum. As I said, they had the momentum going in, and they were strategically smart. I'm pretty sure.
And she didn't really have any confrontation with anyone. I mean, Max did.
Max did it for her. Max was kind of like her
voice.
Yes, exactly. At times.
But so I thought she stepped it up great. And then Mona and Beth, I just think that this experience, they deserved it. Towards the end, they said that they had children at a really young age, and they didn't have the experience to travel and do some of these things. And so, being on the race was a good enough prize for them, and that they're going to cherish this forever. And, now the Derby world is going to be proud of them, and they, are now leaders. And so I just thought it was great, and their children are definitely going to.
Oh yeah, their children can be proud of them.
Oh, so proud, and their husbands.
Yeah, and you know what? Kind of like we always look at teams like Team Bama.
Yeah.
Like Chuck and Winona. There's always a team or two every season that you could just tell they've never really stepped outside of their comfort zone. They never really stepped outside of their locale. So it's always really interesting to see this team that's never even, some of them, I think there's one or two that never even been on a plane before.
Exactly.
And see how they relate to the race and how they interact and how they just take everything in.
I mean, they
Mona
went
and
to
Beth are like that.
Yeah. They went to 5 continents, 10 countries, 3,000 miles across the world.
Yeah, it sounds like they didn't really travel much either, just because they had to raise kids growing up at an early age.
Exactly.
And that, I guess the derby stuff was kind of a hobby. Well, I don't want to say hobby. It makes it sound like I'm belittling it, but it was something for them to do besides be moms.
Yeah.
Something exciting for them to do to pursue something. But they didn't really probably get to travel that much. So it sounded, even though they really, really wanted the money, just to hear them talk about how this was such an amazing adventure. They have all these stories, and their kids are going to be proud of them. Just to hear that was a really happy ending, I think, for Mona and Beth.
I just think that Amazing Race overall is such an amazing experience. I mean, when do you ever get to, for us, cheer for a mullet to win? Roll cheese down a hill, do haggis.
Absolutely.
Swim in mud. I mean, there's just so many adventures, let alone you're experiencing culture, you're traveling, you're meeting new friends.
Yeah.
You have that competition edge to you and that adrenaline. And I mean, overall, this show is just.
We got to apply next season. Jeez, when we got to do that.
Seriously. I mean,
you and I say James and his mom and you and I, and if we could all get on, that would be awesome.
This is an opportunity of a lifetime.
We'll start an alliance right now with James and his mom.
Yeah, and I really do feel that all of the teams really enjoyed the journey and not just the destination. So overall, I thought it was a great season. Loved it all.
Overall, this was a really good group. There was not a lot of drama. I was a little skeptical of the group. I didn't think it was going to be that exciting.
Yeah.
But it was a really good. It's a feel-good group.
It was.
And then we also got to see Connor one last time, Connor's dad. So
and
we
he's
got
off
to hear.
crutches.
We got to hear that. So that's a good little happy ending. I mean, how often do they really pull a team that didn't get in the final 3 and say, all right, let's get an update on them.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to hear that. Maybe if there's an all-star Amazing Race coming up, I'm sure they'll be invited back on. I would be all for it. They were probably the favorite team out of all of them that didn't get that far.
Yeah.
And it was a real shame to see them go.
Well, just their story.
Yeah. I will say that I hope in following seasons that the last leg isn't in the U.S. anymore, because I really do feel for some reason that as much as it's great starting and stopping in the U.S., sometimes I just get a little disappointed because I feel like there's always a team that has an advantage. And again, it seems almost anticlimactic like this one did.
Yeah, and I also feel that I know that they want the finale to be 2 hours, but because the last leg, I mean, I feel like in the past few years, you kind of know who is going to win it.
Well, last season was great because of the Beekman brothers.
Yes, and last season, having to say hello and goodbye in the different languages, that was hard. But I feel like they could maybe not shorten it a little bit.
I almost feel like they have to do 2 hours in this case because, again, I feel like for some reason the last leg is always a little anticlimactic because it always comes down to one move, and that move is early on, whether it's an earlier flight or just a taxi getting lost really early on. I'd love it for one season to see an actual foot race to the finish line, kind of like it was at the end of the first hour even.
Yeah.
I would love it if that happened, but unfortunately, it's a tough one. I'm sure the producers think that too, but I just wanted to voice that out there. Our time's really short, so I wanted to say it's kind of hard to do predictions because the season's over. But
I have a prediction.
You do have a prediction. Should we do the prediction music then?
Prediction.
Thank you.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
My prediction is I think country girls and hockey players are going to bond, go on a real date, maybe date. But I definitely think there's going to be some chemistry there.
Really? Wow. I would like to see.
Maybe they'll like share the $1 million.
I don't think they would. I don't think they would. But
maybe they'll use it for a dinner.
I wonder if they did start dating, if they would do a follow-up like reality show on them or something like that. Something on cable. Might be interesting.
And or where past Amazing Racers are doing now.
Yeah. Well, I
maybe
guess
they're not traveling at all because they're traveled out.
Yeah.
You know, who knows? It'd be kind of interesting.
It'd be nice if they did a travel show based on Amazing Race winners, like traveling to different places too. I guess that would be interesting. Maybe some favorites, like Joey and Megan. I'm sure they would jump on that in a heartbeat.
Oh, for sure.
They would love that. I would just my prediction would be that Connor and his dad get back. You know, I'd love to see that team back in, and that would be my prediction. I think it's a pretty easy prediction to make. And if James was here, I'm sure he would predict a lot of stuff.
Yes.
But we'll have to see if we'll hear from him in another show. Maybe next season.
Yes.
But again, please rate and comment. Let us know what you think. And you know, it's been great. It's been a great season. Thank you so much, Jessica. I love doing this show with you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed every single minute, every single episode.
And James, I know you're listening because you can't be on here right now, but
we miss you, James.
We miss you a lot.
It was fun.
Yeah, we hope to work with you again really, really soon. Please tune into a lot of our other AfterBuzz shows. I know the season's ending, but there's a lot of stuff coming up. Big Brother, I know it's a big popular one. That'll be coming up, and there'll be a lot of summer stuff coming on too. And till then, we'll catch you the next time. Thank you. Oh, my name's Nando Velasquez. You can catch me at NandoVel on Twitter, and you.
And I'm Jessica Carroll, and you can find me at Sika Carroll, SICACARROLL, on Instagram and Twitter.
Great. And till then, catch us some other time. Thanks.
Bye.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.